And Australia's former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has criticised the government for breaking its submarine deal with France in favour of a pact with the US and UK, in which the two will provide Australia with technology for a nuclear-powered fleet. And Turnbull says Prime Minister Scott Morrison has put national security at risk with the move. And for more, we go live to our reporter Greg Navarro in Sydney. Greg, first of all, give us more details on Turnbull's speech.
Well, former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, spoke before the National Press Club here in Australia on Wednesday. Spoke for about an hour. Much of it centered around his predecessor, current Prime Minister, as you mentioned, Scott Morrison, in particular on that deal that Morrison announced he had cancelled the submarine deal with France, instead choosing to build a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines relying on technology from the US and the UK. Now, Turnbull said that doing so has basically eroded the trust that other countries have in Australia as a trusted ally. The move has certainly angered France. France is saying it was not notified about the cancellation of the submarine deal until right before the announcement by Scott Morrison. In fact, Scott Morrison has not been able to speak with French President Emmanuel Macron since all that happened. Malcolm Turnbull, however, who's friends with Macron from his days as Prime Minister, said he has spoken to him since, but wouldn't go into the details of the call. He did mention, though, saying, quote, that all this is an appalling episode in Australia's international affairs, the consequences of which will endure our disadvantage for some time. Now, there's two very important things to note. First of all, Malcolm Turnbull, the former Prime Minister, while he was Prime Minister, helped to broker that initial submarine deal with the French. Also, Scott Morrison is the person who ousted him as Prime Minister. Morrison was his treasurer at the time. Now, someone from within the Morrison administration has responded to these comments by Malcolm Turnbull, saying it's a shame that Turnbull doesn't still show support for the party at which he belongs. Also, they point out at the time that Turnbull made this deal, they say there were some within the administration who felt it was not a good deal and should not have gone ahead. Meanwhile, France had initially pulled its ambassador from Australia because it was angered. It has not reinstated that ambassador, perhaps further proof of just how upset France is over all of this.
All right, that's a harsh criticism from Turnbull indeed. And then how did Morrison or Morrison's administration react to that? And does the public share the criticism?
Well, I think as far as the public goes, we've talked about there are some within Morrison's government who did respond. Not a great deal. The Prime Minister himself, the current Prime Minister, has not responded directly to all this. He is currently in isolation, spending 2 weeks in quarantine after his trip to the U.S., in which he met with Joe Biden as well as Boris Johnson, and then they took part in the Quad meetings as well. As far as a public reaction, there hasn't seemed to be a great deal either way. I think it really depended on which leader you seem to like better out of the two. They had very different styles, although members of the same party. Malcolm Turnbull, slightly less conservative than Scott Morrison at this point. He enjoyed slightly better relations with China, for example, than Scott Morrison does. But certainly times are very different to what they were. There was no pandemic when Malcolm Turnbull was Prime Minister.
Indeed. All right. Thank you very much, Greg Navarro, reporting from Sydney.